Today, we're diving into the pretty challenging ideas of the philosopher Osho. And we're tackling a topic that we all think we know inside and out, the ego. But just a heads up, Osho's take on this might just flip everything you thought you knew about your own identity on its head.
Right out of the gate, Osho hits us with this: I do not believe in believing. It's a really powerful statement, and it perfectly sets the stage for what we're about to get into. See, this isn't about swapping your old beliefs for a new set of rules. It's about taking the whole idea of belief apart, piece by piece.
So, what on earth is an anti-belief system? Well, Osho wasn't interested in selling you a new ideology. His whole goal was to deprogram you, to completely wipe the slate clean, not just scribble over the stuff that's already there. Yeah, Osho's mission, as he saw it, was to strip away all those layers of conditioning, the religious, cultural, and social rules we pick up our entire lives. The goal is to get back to a state of nothingness. Now, that sounds kind of scary, but it's not about being empty. It's more about being in a state of pure potential, what the Buddha called nirvana. And that brings us right to the heart of it all, the ego. Osho suggests that this nothingness we're so afraid of is the very thing the ego is trying to cover up. So it makes you ask, what is this mask that you're wearing? What's it really hiding? Osho's definition of ego is probably the exact opposite of what most of us think. It's not about confidence or self-esteem. He says it's actually a defense mechanism, a shield against this deep-seated feeling of being worthless, that little voice in your head that whispers, "You're not enough." The ego is just the constant, desperate effort to prove that voice wrong. So, where does this feeling of not being good enough even come from? Osho points the finger squarely at society. I mean, think about it. From the time we're kids, we're pushed to be ambitious, to achieve, to make a name for ourselves. The unspoken message is always that just being you isn't good enough. You have to earn your worth. And that right there, that's the fuel that the ego runs on. And here's the real problem, that hunger can never, ever be satisfied. Osho used some great stories to show this really crucial truth. No amount of money, power, or success can ever fill that void the ego is trying to hide. So, Osho tells this parable about a sage who makes friends with a little rat. One day, a cat comes along and threatens the rat. So, the sage, using his powers, turns the rat into a bigger cat. Problem solved, right? You'd think so. But of course, it doesn't stop there. The new cat is soon terrified of a dog, so the sage turns it into a cheetah. Then the cheetah gets attacked by a lion, so the sage helps out one last time and turns it into the most powerful animal in the jungle, a huge, mighty lion. And here's the crazy twist. The lion, now completely consumed by its new, powerful identity, looks at the sage and sees a threat. Why? Because the sage is the only one who knows it used to be a tiny, scared rat, so it attacks its own creator. It just goes to show that once the ego is created, it will do anything to protect itself, even destroy the thing that made it. This story reveals something absolutely fundamental about the ego. It can't exist on its own. It needs comparison to survive. It's constantly measuring itself against everyone and everything else, always trying to be bigger, better, or stronger. Let's bring this into the modern world for a second. Take Donald Trump. He reached what you might call the absolute pinnacle of global power, President of the United States. But it wasn't enough. His ego desperately wanted a Nobel Peace Prize because he was fixated on the one major award his predecessor had that he didn't. You see, for the ego, a huge achievement is never the finish line. It's just a new starting point for another comparison. Or, hey, what about Napoleon, a military genius who conquered most of Europe? And yet, what consumed him? British newspaper cartoons that made fun of him for being short, even though he was actually average height for his time. His ego latched onto this tiny perceived flaw, and no amount of power or victory could ever make that feeling go away. So, these examples, they just show this relentless, vicious cycle of the ego. Always striving, never satisfied. And it brings up a really important question. If fighting the ego just makes it stronger, and feeding it is pointless, how in the world do we escape this trap? Well, Osho's solution isn't about fighting the ego head-on. It's something much more subtle and honestly way more profound. It's what he calls the path of self-awareness. He actually pulls this from the Buddha's teachings. It's a three-step process. First, you have to understand the ego, see that it grows out of that feeling of worthlessness. Second, you just observe it. Watch it do its thing without judging it, almost like you're watching a character in a movie. And third, and this is the really hard one, you have to accept the emptiness it's trying to hide.
You have to embrace the idea that it is perfectly okay to just be.
The real key insight here is that you don't beat the ego by fighting it. You just stop feeding it. You starve it of its fuel, which is your attention and your belief in it. Osho says that without that, it just collapses on its own, like a house of cards in a light breeze. Now, this might all sound a bit philosophical, but it has incredibly real consequences for our modern lives. I mean, so many of the systems we deal with every single day are basically designed to prey on the very vulnerabilities that the ego creates. Think about it. There's a huge conflict, right? Society values efficiency. It wants us to be predictable, almost like machines. But our own humanity, our own spirit, requires self-awareness. So you have this fundamental clash between the life society wants you to live and the conscious life that actually leads to freedom. And this playground for the ego, oh, it is everywhere. It's that little dopamine hit from a social media like. It's the instant gratification of one-click shopping. It's the constant message that you'll finally be happy if you just buy one more thing. These systems are built to thrive on our lack of self-awareness. Osho's words here are pretty blunt. He says, no society actually wants you to become wise. Why? Because wise people are hard to exploit. People who are self-aware can't be so easily tricked into living a life that isn't true to themselves. And when you look at it that way, breaking free is almost an act of rebellion. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The path to getting out of this endless loop of ego, jealousy, and comparison, it isn't about achieving more or having more. It's about becoming more aware of the game we're all playing. That awareness is the real key to finding any kind of genuine joy. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. While the ego can feel like this massive external force, we're the ones who give it power. We're the ones who build its walls, brick by brick. So the final question really is this. Is self-awareness the only key that can unlock the prison we've built for ourselves?